Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you very much for joining us for this installment of Donnybrook. Good to have you with us, and thanks for your support. Lots to talk about this week, as always. Let's first meet the panelists, starting with the no longer vacationing Wendy Wiese, who's back, and we're glad about that. Of course, she's 50% of the Jennifer and Wendy show on the Big 550 KTRS. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and STLtoday.com. Ray Hartmann from Substack, where you see Ray Hartmann's St. Louis Insider, and he's a founder of the Riverfront Times. Alvin Reid, sports columnist and editor with the St. Louis American. Well, Wendy, 2 weeks ago, I wasn't here. I was on a much-deserved vacation.
From everybody around the table.
But you folks were talking about Boeing under the careful leadership of Alvin Reid. And at that time, it wasn't certain exactly how much of a subsidy Boeing would get for its $1.8 billion expansion in St. Louis County. Well, the numbers were revised, and they actually went up by $47 million. It's now $155 million. And we also learned this week when Boeing representatives and others went in front of the St. Louis County Council that the company will still get these tax breaks even if it reduces its 16,000-person workforce locally by 4,000 people. So it can cut its jobs by 25% and still get the tax breaks. You said at the time on this program, we need the numbers, we need the guarantees. How do you feel tonight?
I feel vindicated, Candyman, candy store owner, Mr. McClellan.
I'll defend myself, Wendy.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe it. First of all, the super secret aircraft program. So that's kind of hard to keep track of, right? And the fact that the county was working with numbers from 2021. So there's just a whole lot of uncertainty when it comes to the future, the fact that now it's $155 million, and yes, they can still get that if they cut 4,000 jobs. So no, I am not feeling as comfortable with your largesse,
well,
Mr. McClellan.
Candyman is going to
set us straight.
Yes, I still think that Boeing is so important to the region, and you know, I never thought Anheuser-Busch would be sold. I never thought the Post-Dispatch would be sold. You just don't think of these companies going away until they go. And I think that if I continue to say, my big question to Boeing would be, is this enough?
You know, that's what you said last time.
That is
it wasn't.
It wasn't. But
while sitting in your chair and just, you know, throwing the topic out there, Wendy, I'll give you credit because you said, like, nah, devil's in the details, of course.
You said that.
But I just said, like, you know, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And I said that one, this one, for some reason, I had no logic behind it or anything. But then I said, there's something about this. It's just making the hair on my neck stand up. So when that story, you know, was released, or, you know, and I wasn't a top secret. They went to and, you know, testified to all this before county council. I kind of felt like I just knew it was something. And when the something hit, the money got increased. But I'm more concerned with now wait, this deal, you'll still get all this, and you'll reduce. You could possibly let 4,000 people go.
Right.
So whatever happened to the guaranteed, what, 500 jobs? That's completely off.
Well, you have to understand that there's a lot of on the if-come on a deal like this because they're trying to get the new generation fighter. And you have to spend a lot of money to develop such a plane, and you can't guarantee that you're going to get it. Lockheed could get it, but they have to try. That's my point.
I said at the time that it was sort of like Boeing was, you know, if you ever talk to a teenager who's kind of twirling their hair, they don't want to get into the specifics or the details. That's how it goes.
Did I say something? I guess I did. I was actually on my fellow founders' side, and I'm only going to slightly bail. I'm going to be in the middle of the road with the yellow stripes and the dead armadillos, as they say. But I think basically we have to look at the long view of this, and while these things are very distasteful to those of us that don't like corporate welfare, I think the big picture is you have to do what you got to do to keep Boeing. So I'm with Bill on that.
Thank you, Ray.
But I will say, and I've talked to folks smarter than me since then, that there are cities, and I'm actually looking into this a little bit, that have figured out ways to do it, to your point about the details, where you can still take steps to protect schools. You can say to somebody, if you're going to increase, in this case, I don't know if it's true, but if you're going to increase jobs, you're going to have to contribute to the infrastructure that you cause. There are ways. St. Louis seems to be too easy, too much, not making enough, not driving a hard enough bargain, perhaps. So I think there's a middle ground that says you can't unilaterally disarm on some principle and just lose a company like Boeing or this particular project for weapons of mass destruction, whatever it is. But I think you have to at least protect schools. You have to do some things that you know, with the details.
Let me ask you about another issue, Ray. This time in downtown St. Louis. The city had a party for kids on Saturday night. Several weeks ago, maybe several months ago, we were talking about the need for places for kids to gather in St. Louis so they're not causing too much commotion. And so the city started these Saturday night events at the rec centers, and one of them on Chestnut and Market in downtown St. Louis. And apparently things went just fine with the DJ, music, and dancing. And then at 11 o'clock, the kids didn't go home. They hung out in St. Louis's downtown, causing commotion, dancing on cars till 3 in the morning. Was it wise to have, given everything that the residents and the businesses in downtown St. Louis have been through this year, was it wise to have an event for youth in downtown St. Louis?
Well, no. I mean, not on a Saturday night. I mean, are you really surprised? I mean, can't blame the kids. I mean,
wait a minute. Okay. All right.
I'm saying the kids are going to do what kids do at the end of a party on 11 o'clock. I mean, were you surprised that they weren't all going to single file, you know, go home? I mean, it's like, I think it's a larger, of course you want to do things. I've been advocating for decades. We need more rec centers. We need more events for kids. And having daytime events or whatever for kids, fine. If you do that kind of party, you're going to have kids are going to be kids. The thing that it says to me, and I know the downtown residents were unhappy, is most cities today understand you've got to build from the downtown residents, be they condo owners, apartments, or small businesses, you got to build from them out. You've got to understand they are pivotal. And whether you're talking about this issue or homelessness or whatever else, you've got to understand them first. And for whatever reason, the city government and frankly the big businesses downtown just treat them like they're an annoyance, and this is the kind of stuff you get.
Well, I think it was a good idea that got bad. Okay, I don't have a problem with saying, like, all right, at 11 o'clock, party's over. But at 11 o'clock, the party's over. And you're not roaming the streets, and you're not doing this, and there is no kids being kids. If you're going to act irresponsibly, well, tell you what, you're not going to be on the street. You're getting ushered out. What's the old saying? What's the America what?
They got a right to be on the streets.
No, you don't. At 11 o'clock, I'm clearing a 4-block radius of this place, and you're not going to the arch, and you're not dancing on cars, and it's not going to happen.
It's 11 o'clock. You know where your
children are. Why is it so hard for everybody to say, like, okay, fun time's over. Go home.
Well, the problem, I mean, I thought it was a terrible idea to invite a bunch of kids downtown and tell them to go home at 11. But the problem is, what are you going to do? It's not officer friendly out there anymore. I mean, you don't say, okay, kids, time to go. If they say no, I mean, do you kettle them? I mean, what do you do, Alvin?
Well, okay, if you want to be belligerent, you get arrested. Or you just get ushered out of the streets. You all make it sound like, okay, we are going to invite kids downtown, and then what happens after 11 o'clock? No, we just don't know. Take control of the situation.
I say just don't invite the kids down, because you're inviting a problem.
But you need a place. You need a place for the kids, and the rec centers aren't popular. How about, if the Muni's not playing, how about the Muni parking lot?
Oh, I'm sure they would love that idea, Charlie.
I'm just thinking of some place where kids can gather that won't be near residents.
As I say, there's a difference between trying to do things, as I said,
is empty.
Whether you're talking,
that's like in
10, 11 o'clock. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that's like inviting, with all of the bad press and everything that we've seen happening in downtown in the last couple of months. It's like saying, hey, let's have the Pyromaniacs convention at the the site of the Great Fire of Chicago. You can't have the kids who have caused so much trouble invited back downtown for a party.
Well, but
that doesn't make any sense.
Charlie, I want to say something, because I want to disagree with Alvin. I don't necessarily characterize these kids as having caused so much trouble. We don't know who they were.
Ray, a minute ago you were talking about how you have to build.
No, I said
from the outside and
the downtown.
No, I did.
The businesses and the residents
I bet if you took a survey of the downtown residents and said, "Do you want to have a big party on Saturday night for kids?" I don't think it would even be.
They don't. No, I'm saying I'm against having this party. I don't think we should characterize these kids as having caused trouble. My point is this: well, here's not these. You don't know any particular kids. Any group of teens.
They were hanging around
people in their early.
2 o'clock.
But by the way, people in their teens and early 20s have a right as Americans to walk down the street. You can't just say, "Well, you're out of here. You leave me downtown."
Unless there's a
well,
curfew.
but there isn't, and you can't.
If you
say
that. Your house, Ray.
In the interest of time. Some of those
I'm
kids are better
against
behaved
having
than
the party at night.
The five of us here. Hey, Alvin Reid, St. Louis Hills did something that Holly Hills did last year. Both are neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis, and on Tuesday, the voters in St. Louis Hills voted to increase their property taxes by about $180 to $200 per home to pay for surveillance cameras and someone to monitor it. The idea is to increase public safety and reduce crime. But some, including our friend Sarah Fensky, have questioned whether that's really ethical or fair if, after all, poorer neighborhoods can't afford to raise their property taxes for surveillance cameras.
Different argument. I mean, being poor may not be, like how you get to a situation in life may not be ethical. We may look at it like, boy, we need to change our moral structure. But if a neighborhood with money decides we are going to shell out some of it to have extra security in our neighborhood, I have to applaud that. I mean, there's simply nothing wrong with that.
I adore Sarah Fensky. I thought it was a fantastic column, but I would rather see this than for sale signs and any further erosion in terms of the residential life in the downtown area, the St. Louis area.
Let me correct the record. She wrote a very nice story in the Riverfront Times, and she did not question the ethics of. In fact, she even said can't blame St. Louis Hills. Right. So she did not say anything was done unethically. What Sarah pointed out, and I thought she did. It's too bad she's not on to.
Well, I think if you say the ethics of a rich neighborhood versus a poor neighborhood.
She didn't say use I don't think.
Okay. Well, maybe I mischaracterized.
Yeah. Well, you did.
Her point should a rich neighborhood or a wealthier neighborhood have more public safety than one that is not wealthy?
And she's right, and the answer is no. In other words, no one, as I said, St. Louis Hills passed Prop S. No one's criticizing St. Louis Hills. Nobody's blaming them. But two things can be possible. One, you can be understanding of the fact that neighborhoods want to have their extra protection, but also point out that there's two tiers here in the city, and that we need to she, I think, cited a Jeremy Kohler piece at ProPublica, which is very good, making the point that we have this terrible unjust system where we just ignore the needs of poor neighborhoods. I think she's right.
We don't have enough police to cover the entire city the way it ought to be covered. So like Alvin says, if there's a neighborhood that can afford extra police on the side, good for them.
And good for Sarah Fensky's.
What's wrong with Sarah and your argument is the following. There is a ton of money in St. Louis right now. like never before. There's no shortage of money to put up surveillance cameras. There's the lack of will. What you, and with all due respect, Ms. Fenske, miss is that the Kroenke money is $250 million. $500 million from the federal government. This program's only $500,000 a year. If there was the will of the mayor or others to put up these cameras elsewhere, they could do it. So don't blame poverty or anything else.
Right, and also, let's say I was lucky enough to hit that $1.5 billion Powerball, all right? And after taxes, I said, like, okay, I am going to hire extra security for North St. Louis.
That's right.
Holly Hills wouldn't protest. St. Louis Hills wouldn't protest.
That's right.
Downtown wouldn't protest. You know who'd protest? North St. Louis. They'd be in my face like this, saying like, how dare you set them folks let loose on us, and we need this, and that last thing we need is the police. And I'd say like, no, you need 3 times more police. So I'm not going to be mad at anybody's neighborhood because they took steps to what they thought
She was
points all around.
Again,
and Sarah Fenske was not.
She wasn't mad at any neighborhood.
No,
and I'm not mad at it. I just said
No, she was just calling attention.
I think you are kind of mischaracterizing.
Okay, well, if I did, I apologize. I think very highly of Ms. Fenske and you, Ray, but I'm
not mad at any. I just said I don't blame the neighborhood.
We're going to move on to Bill, because this week I thought it was weird. On August the 4th, last Friday, oh my gosh, it was August the 4th.
No.
That Anheuser-Busch gave $30,000, August the 4th, get it?
Yeah,
gave $30,000 to the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee after all of the conservatives decided they would boycott Bud Light, causing a 10% reduction in the second quarter in revenues, hundreds of layoffs as a result. Anheuser-Busch turns around and gives the enemy $30,000. What's going on, Bill?
Well, business as usual. I mean, first of all, the Bush beer people don't consider conservatives the enemy, and $30,000 isn't a whole lot of money in this game. So of course they give money to the Republicans. I mean, they're not going to say you protested whatever the influencer's name was, so we're not going to give you any money. They want to be friends with everybody.
Exactly. They always have. I mean, and I think Anheuser-Busch, or AB InBev, you wouldn't need much sodium pentothal to get their board to admit that this was an implosion from inside their marketing department. They grossly overestimated the reaction on the part of the beer drinking public to a number of missteps. It had nothing to do with politics, and they're gonna give money to both sides, as they always have.
Right, and this was I would say a perfect storm, but it was like Halley's Comet when it comes. Very few protests have the impact that this one, and again, it was a perfect storm where it wasn't just, there's a lot of ads now that promote the LGBT community. Nobody says anything.
No.
If this one touched on the trans issue, which happened to, and I don't even want to say it's a Republican issue as much as a kind of a right-wing MAGA issue, where they're trying to, no, I mean, really.
Pretty similar though, right?
Well, no, I mean, unfortunately, but I think,
if there is a Republican
but there
Party
is possible to identify Republican candidates aren't all in on it. But my point is that the persecution, the hatred for trans people, intersected, in my opinion, with this ad and the politicians.
When you have your marketing, it's not hate. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
It's not hatred.
My point is, I think there's a lot of hatred for trans people on that side.
But
I think this.
So you're rewarding it.
No,
and it works.
Well, let Alvin say
because I would just say that, all right, AB gave money to National Rifle Association.
Correct.
I don't think Mayor Jones or the county executive is going to turn down anything AB does for them, even though we got a problem with guns, and they are first in line to say, like, we have got to do something about all these guns, and the NRA is a problem. But they would say, like, AB, we don't want your money because you're supporting the NRA. It makes sense. And plus, it keeps it in the news cycle. If you don't give them this money that you gave them last year, then you're going to be reading about why didn't you give them this money that you gave them last year. So just take it out. And just, take your $30,000.
And I know that transgender hatred there's your bumper sticker, but what I think doesn't get nearly enough attention is when your marketing chief says, we don't want this part of the this segment of the market anymore, drinking Bud Light. Guess what? they're peace out.
I
They're not
agree.
going to drink your Brennan
Fair point,
anymore.
Wendy. Hey, let me ask you about the president of Explore St. Louis, Kitty Ratcliffe, said that with 28 events scheduled in 2024 for the downtown St. Louis Convention Center, that's about half the number this year. And I looked around, and some other convention cities like Las Vegas are going to have years next year that are better than 2019 before the pandemic. Dallas is doing well, too. So why is St. Louis not doing well attracting events next year?
Well, according to Kitty Ratcliffe, speaking at the CVC, the monthly meeting, she went down the list of the $200 million expansion that has been delayed, foot traffic from businesses that's moving out to the suburbs, obviously the pandemic, who looms large because these large groups make their plans well in advance, and then way down the list of possible reasons why things are so awkward, as she said, was the fact that the national headline splashed was the girl who lost both of her legs while she was visiting St. Louis. I think everybody around this table is in agreement that crime is going to be a problem for us for a while. It's a cyclical thing. It's going to have to be addressed aggressively, or maybe it won't be cyclical.
Well, I think you're right about that. I happen to be a little bit familiar with that industry for a long time, and I happen to think that Explore St. Louis, I actually think they do a pretty good job given what you just said. I mean, it starts with crime. I'm amazed we get any shows. When you look, and I don't know if she mentioned, I didn't follow closely what she said, you start with a crime issue, which is just overwhelming, and the fact that it's very difficult to get direct flights into Lambert, which is a huge issue for conventions, and the reputation that we have. I think it's hard to measure how none of us have the data to say, well, what we should be doing, what we are. But it's amazing we get any conventions right now. And I think it's one of the, well, let me finish. One of the things.
Limited.
Be quick.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
That's I don't want to say I don't want to say loser attitude, but that's attitude of failure. I'm surprised we get any conventions. Oh, no. No. The object is to finish first. And you're like saying, like, there's 5 teams in the division and we finished 4th. Good job? No way. And I think we need fresh faces and fresh ideas. I really do. And I know that you didn't want a police chief, that came from someplace else. But, boy, I think we need to start over from scratch when it comes to convention. I'm not blaming any one individual, but I think we need to bring somebody in here who is fresher, doesn't care what happened before. They were throwing dirt on the Big 12 conference this time last year. They hired one guy. He walked in there and he said, we're open for business, and he made it happen. We need that in St. Louis.
Well, we have actually more nonstops to St. Louis than Kansas City does. I don't know what Kansas City's convention business is like now, but I do think Kansas City is on a roll, and St. Louis's downtown is not the place that a conventioneer would necessarily want to go to, maybe with a spouse, while the person's attending a convention, the spouse goes and shops around downtown. That's not really happening in St. Louis too much.
I think Alvin's right. I misstated that. Alvin's right about that. I mean, I overstated it, but I would say that.
You mischaracterized yourself.
Yeah, I did. No, I think he's right. That I shouldn't have said any. But I don't think you can look at the obstacles we have and just assume that somehow we can magically overcome them.
Well, Bill,
they're going to be difficult.
2-minute warning on the floor. Bill, as it turns out, the 911 service is not getting better, and Maria Kina at KMOX reported that one family from Cape Girardeau, maybe others had this story too, was on hold for 30 minutes when their son had a seizure. And apparently, one of the dispatchers said to one of the callers, hey, maybe you shouldn't come to St. Louis. For his part, Fire Chief Dan Jankerson said, the 911 system is really slow, but it might be better in 2 years. What do you think?
I think it's scandalous. I mean, we have so much money, the Rams money, the COVID money, that the mayor's talking about having people go door to door to figure out how to spend all this money, and we have a 911 system that doesn't work at all, that people call and no one answers. I mean, all this dough we have, we ought to just say in 6 months we're going to have this thing fixed.
Absolutely. And let me say, I don't care whether it's Mayor Jones or whether it's Chief Jenkinson or whether it's
Spider-Man.
Exactly. You know, Chief Tracy, whoever's got to figure this out. To me, the second priority in this town should be a distant second. This should be viewed by the administration and anyone who's part of the food chain as an emergency. I said it a couple weeks ago. Couldn't agree with you more, Bill. This is an emergency. No pun intended. This is an emergency, and whether it's the Rams, whatever it is, we have to do it yesterday.
It's a deal breaker.
It's just unbelievable.
It really is. And I know that probably schools are right there, you know, and obviously crime. But, I mean, if you were, I mean, I wouldn't live in the safest part of St. Louis in a penthouse if it's going to take a half hour for somebody I'm having a heart attack.
Right.
No, that's a deal breaker.
Well, I remember a friend, he's retired now, but he police officer, used to tell his wife, now, if anything happens, honey, call Domino's. They guarantee they'll be here in 30 minutes.
And on that note, let's take a look at the mailbag and see what viewers had to say about last week's program. Late night parties for young people in downtown St. Louis. What could go wrong with that? That from Bill Kellenberger of Weldon Spring, Missouri. With regard to Illinois requiring schools to include instruction on Native American history, states already have significant input into curriculum requirements, testing, and school schedules, all backed up by control of funding. That from Mary Garrett of St. Peter's. John Hilgeman of Belleville wrote, as an 80-year-old viewer, I found your opposition to Joe Biden's campaign for a second term solely on the basis of his age to be a clear example of ageism. I wish that all of you youngsters will be as capable as Joe Biden if and when you reach his age. Thank you, Mr. Hilgeman. You can write us, care of 9PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org or X, formerly known as Twitter. Use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. If I could speak English, I'd be dangerous. Call the 9 line at 314-512-9094 and listen to us on your favorite podcast source, as I did this week, as a matter of fact, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, or TuneIn. For sure, we'll have more topics next week, and we thank you very much for joining us. We hope you'll be with us in 7 days. Thank you so much.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.